Let's talk some more now about the upcoming Star Trek Starfleet Academy TV series. I think we might be about to get the worst Trek show in the history of the franchise, because it looks so utterly un-Star Trek from the trailers. And when it comes to the setting and the kinds of stories the show aims to tackle, I don't see how this is going to have a massive appeal with long-time fans. Firstly, the show is due to be released on January 15th, which is less than 3 months away from the time of making this video. It's mostly focused on a group of young cadets who sound and act like cliched Gen Z characters and teens from some CW show. Also, here's a great group shot, complete with a Klingon who doesn't look especially warrior-like, does he? With his crossed-legged effeminate posture, he's probably sipping his soy latte Ractigino. Holly Hunter is heading up the cast. She plays the Chancellor of Starfleet Academy, and Starfleet Academy appears to be a ship, right? She's named Nala Ake. Another terrible new Trek character name. Names of characters matter. They should make an impact. They should be clear and memorable. They had an issue with this on Star Trek Discovery as well, where there were just seasons were going by and you couldn't remember the names of some of the bridge crew. Now, sometimes this was because their name would be only said a handful of times and it might be said too quickly for you to catch it. Also, it's because the characters were so forgettable that they failed to make any kind of impression on you. Before I go very much further with this video, just a reminder to go ahead and subscribe to my other channel as well, Computing Forever, which is linked below in the description box. And I'm making new content over there if you're interested, so please subscribe. It helps me out, and also hit the bell notification thing as well. That's Computing Forever. Now, none of the young cadets in the show seem particularly engaging. The story focuses mainly on the character of Caleb and his traumatic childhood and the search for his mother, and the series seems to be very soap opera-ish, which is to be expected of a show that's focusing on, relationships and college-type drama. So it's aimed at a younger Gen Z demographic. So I'd imagine there's going to be a lot of talking about feelings, right? Aiming it at that kind of demographic is risky, and I think it's a huge mistake because that's not what Star Trek is supposed to be about. High school and college-centric shows about young romance and the challenges of young adulthood, that's quite niche. And this show is expensive. It's got a big budget. They probably spent a fortune on sets and visual effects. And so you want to make sure that your big budget sci-fi show appeals to as broad an audience as possible. Instead, they've kind of narrowed the focus to a teen and 20-something kind of audience. And I think that's a massive mistake because Star Trek has lots of older fans who simply want a conventional Star Trek series and they're not going to connect with this kind of show. So I can't see this show lasting longer than a season or two, especially with how bad new Trek writing tends to be. I also don't like the look of the show. The set designs are very Star Trek Discovery, which just look awful. Also, this is another spin-off of Star Trek Discovery, which was already a very polarizing show for Star Trek fans. It felt very removed from the rest of the franchise, and I don't think it's an especially strong foundation for a new series. Now, Robert Picardo returns as the Doctor from Voyager. Now, I believe this is the original EMH and not the backup version from the Voyager episode A Living Witness, which would have been an interesting version of the character to see again. But the reason I say this is because this is supposed to be the same Doctor from Star Trek Prodigy. So that was the original program of the EMH. Now, bringing him back is fine, but it is going to be kind of odd if he makes many references to Voyager, which he's probably going to, right? But given how many hundreds of years he's lived, it would be kind of strange for him to spend very much time recalling the first 7 years of his life when he's lived orders of magnitude more than that since then. So we'll see. We'll see. Ultimately, Star Trek Starfleet Academy represents everything that's wrong with modern Star Trek, in my view. It's a show that's set in a location that fans don't want to see Star Trek set in, which is Starfleet Academy. For the most part, fans aren't interested in Star Trek 90210 or a sci-fi Dawson's Creek, and that's the kind of demographic that it's aimed at. The people running Star Trek these days seem to be determined to build their own version of the franchise, which is probably why they've built this Starfleet Academy series off the back of Discovery. So they could have based it in any other era of the franchise. They could have gone back to the 24th century. They could have gone back and made a Starfleet Academy series based in the sort of TNG or Voyager kind of timeline. Yet they chose the Discovery timeline to base this show in, despite how unpopular Discovery was with many fans. Whether it's Discovery, the Kelvin timeline movies, Prodigy with its Monsters, Inc. visual design, Lower Decks with its Rick and Morty inspired fourth wall breaking comedy, there's been a consistent effort to turn Star Trek these days into something it was never meant to be, to go in directions that the franchise was never supposed to go in. Now, as I've said before, if you had surveyed the fan base and asked them in a massive poll online what kind of Trek show they'd like to see next, what era they'd like the show set in, what themes, what kind of characters, you're going to get a wide range of responses. But I suspect that most fans are going to want a series that is much more in keeping with the best era of the franchise. The kind of Star Trek we got from the late 1980s through to 2005. TNG, DS9, Voyager, Enterprise, they're going to want a show that is much more like those. Very few fans would have requested a show that looks and sounds like this Star Trek Starfleet Academy series. And I think the popularity of The Orville, a Star Trek-inspired comedy drama show, only further serves to underline what Trek fans want but aren't getting from official Star Trek these days. It just feels like this Star Trek Starfleet Academy show is being made for either a very small minority of the fan base, which is a terrible idea from a ratings perspective, especially considering how expensive the show is to make, or it's being made for a new audience, which is also a bad idea because you already have an existing massive fan base to tap into. Just give the fans what they want. It's that simple. So look, don't be surprised if longtime Trek fans don't show up for this show, which is why it's so frustrating that the show even has the Star Trek name in the title in the first place. I wouldn't be complaining if this was a non-Star Trek show, because ultimately this is going to have very little appeal with most of the fan base. But we shall see in 3 months' time. I'm not expecting to be pleasantly surprised. Are you? Let me know your thoughts on this in the comments below. Thank you very much for watching. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. Hit that notification bell to be notified of future updates. Hit that like button. Share this video out there. Take care. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.